Hi there, and welcome to Chapter 6. Again, we're providing brief summaries that will assist in your review of the chapters, provide you with an overview of the information, and provide another format that you can utilize for accessing the data and the information for the class. In Chapter 6, we're looking at at sampling design, theory, and methods. And specifically, we're going to explain the role of sampling in the research process, distinguish between probability and non-probability samples, understand what factors we need to consider when we are determining appropriate sample sizes, and understand the steps in developing a sampling plan. Now, the role of sampling in the information search process. Fundamentals of sampling basically are that we are identifying within a population a subset that is representative of that population, and based on the results of the subset of the population, we're going to make some conclusions about what our research questions are about that target population. Now, I'm not going to be able to, for instance, survey every human in the United States. I can, however, take a representative sample of several thousand respondents and then, based on that, extrapolate to the nation as a whole. Sampling must be representative of the target population if it's to provide accurate estimates, and it's often used because it reduces the amount of time and money required in the data collection process. Now, there are two basic types of samples. These are a probability sample and a non-probability sample. In a probability sample, the sampling unit in the defined target population has a known probability for being selected in a sample. And then the actual probability of selection for each sampling unit may equal that probability depending on the type of sampling that's being used. In a non-probability sample, the probability of selection for each sampling unit is not known, and the selection of sampling units is based on some type of intuitive judgment or the knowledge of the researcher themselves. Probability and sampling enables the researcher to judge the reliability and the validity of the data collected by calculating the probability of the findings based on the sample will differ from the defined target population. So again, what we're looking for there are the differences in proportions between our sample and the actual population at large. In a non-probability sample, we are not doing that, and there is no statistical way to kind of validate the data, as it were. Instead, convenience, judgment are the ways that we assess it. And then different data types or different sampling methods that are used for non-probability samples are convenience sample. In other words, I have access to these 300 students, I'm going to survey them. Judgment sample, I believe that these 150 students may be representative of the entire campus. A quota, I want to have 50 women and 50 male respondents. And a snowball, where I may ask a respondent to ask additional people to participate. And now each of these techniques has its own advantages and disadvantages, which I'm not going to get into in the video, but I strongly suggest you take a look at within the chapter and be able to utilize in your discussion of the questions that we have posted online. Now, what factors should we be considering when we're looking at sample sizes? And first is the amount of money and time available impacts the decision. Generally, the larger the sample, the greater the amount of money it's going to take, and often the greater the amount of time. Things that we look at are, as far as determining the sample size, are the variability of the population, the level of confidence we desire for the estimates, and the degree of precision desired in estimating the population characteristics. The greater the variability, the higher the level of confidence that's going to be required. Similarly, more precise the measurement sample results, the larger the sample size. Statistical formulas, you'd think a statistician should be able to say that word. Statistical formulas are used to determine the required sample size in probability sampling. Sample sizes for non-probability designs are determined by subjective methods such as industry standards, previous studies that you've seen within literature, or intuitive judgments of the researcher. So the size of the defined target population does not affect the size of the required sample unless the population is small relative to the sample size in a non-probability sample. So, what are the 7 steps in developing a sampling plan? First, define the target population. Second, select the data collection method. Third, identify the sampling frames needed. Fourth, select the appropriate sampling method for your research question. How generalizable do you need the results to be? Fifth, determine the necessary sample sizes and the overall contact rates. 6, create the plan for selecting the sampling units. And 7, execute the operational plan. Now this concludes the overview for chapter 6. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. These are not sufficient to be study guides, but should provide you with a highlight on important information within the chapter that you should be examining in more detail. Thank you very much.